Welcome to the Creative Adventure Podcast, an artist's guide to modern freelancing. Hello everyone, welcome to the Tavern. Close your applications, put away ZBrush, Blender, Cinema 4D, close Procreate, stop drawing, whatever you're doing. Put down your sword, put down your axe, put down your wizard staff. We're going to talk about niching down today as an artist. Should you do it? What are the benefits, etc. We're going to start with a short story, and imagine you're in the tavern today and you meet a young fellow adventurer. He's eating his meal, he's enjoying his ale after a long adventuring day fighting monsters, demons, etc. And you notice something about his equipment. Most of it is embellished with silver and gems and of a holy nature. You're kind of surprised that someone of his archetype is in a tavern like this, out in the middle of nowhere. He catches your gaze and asks, "Do you need something?" And you soon converse and discover that he specializes in slaying monsters, specifically of the unholy type, vampires, werewolves, demons, etc. And you learn that this character is a paladin, but he's also a freelancer. And he is specialized with his holy skills to bring that to slay the demons and the monsters of the land. He has the ability as a paladin to do it much easier than most people. He has access to holy weaponry, silver weaponry that gives him the ability to make it much easier to go slay vampires. So this gives him an advantage, and you could say his niche is monster slaying as a paladin, and that affords him the ability to charge a higher rate and a premium rate. You discover that this paladin's name is Pat. We'll call him Pat the Paladin. And with that, I want you to think about this short and think about what your niche is. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to kick it away to some guests. We're going to kick it away to my friend Jonathan Winbush. He's going to talk about his specialty in niching down in Unreal Engine. We're going to talk to my friend Kyle Wlodyga, or he's going to share his story about how he niched down in illustration and toy design. And we're going to hear some words from the digital chef, Patrick 4D, on his niche in the food 3D rendering world. Now, think about your niche, hear what Jonathan, Kyle, and Pat have to say, and after that, we'll take a short rest and come back and talk about niching down.
What up, Winbush here. And I've always considered myself as a journalist. I've been working professionally as a motion graphics artist since around 2006. But I have to say, once I discovered Unreal Engine, this goes all the way back to about 2019, that opened up a whole world for me, especially once I put tutorials out there on YouTube. I would say adding Unreal Engine, personally for me, helped me out tremendously because I used to have a render farm here inside my house because a lot of work that I do is NDA. I can't allow it to go out there on the render farm and risk being exposed. And so I have my own render farm here. And once I was able to actually do everything in real time in Unreal, especially with the world building and all the stuff I was doing for like Discovery Channel, History Channel, Netflix, once I was able to put that into Unreal Engine and be able to get that real-time feedback, that opened everything up for me tremendously. It really just helped me open up overall as an artist. So I would say the exposure online probably helped me out more than anything because I was doing tutorials online, and of course different studios started picking that up, so I got consulting work out of it. Some of my own clients, once they discovered that I was using Unreal Engine instead of traditional means, that got them really excited, and we just started doing bigger and bigger projects because then we could worry about being more creative and less worried about render times, because in the past we'd have to worry about render times. Sometimes we'd have to pull back a little bit just because the deadline, especially in TV, was so short. So just being able to expose my clients to that really helped me out, and it helped solidify me as an artist that they can rely on, that got stuff done really quickly. So this might surprise a lot of people, but if I had to pick a class when playing Dungeons and Dragons, I would go for a mage class. Anytime I play any type of RPG, that's typically what I go for. But as an added bonus, I would go for a warrior mage class, kind of like Yami. If anybody watches Black Clover, that anime, there's a lot of warrior mages on there, so they could do magic. They also do training, so they're physically fit. So I would find myself in that realm. But if I only had to pick one, definitely a mage class. I appreciate you having me on the podcast, Jags. Thanks again.
My name's Wlodyga. I'm a toy designer, nerd, and big heavy metal fan and toy collector and all that stuff. My niche really is heavy metal and kind of action figures and toy design. And I really was able to find my niche just by kind of following my passions. I was very fortunate enough to have people who were able to support me early on in college or just out of college to help me kind of find what that is. I always started with comic books, but then just by networking and talking to people genuinely about the things that I was passionate about, I was able to find kind of what my niche was, and it was always heavy metal, comic books, Godzilla, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, really just toy design is something I kind of fell into. Feel very fortunate to be able to do what I do. Finding this niche has really helped me as a freelancer because it really helps me narrow down the stuff I want to do. When I was in college or just out of college, I used to do a lot of freelance kind of stuff for people that I don't really like, or things I didn't really want to do, like, YouTube marquee kind of illustration or that kind of thing, and it never really worked out. I always was super over it, not stoked about what I was doing. But as soon as I started getting some real toy design and heavy metal kind of stuff in my portfolio, that's when more of those jobs started kind of coming my way, which was very fortunate. Huge boon. Just felt like I was really doing the stuff I wanted to be doing. If I was to pick a class from Dungeons and Dragons, man, I play Dungeons and Dragons all the time. I've been playing with the same group for 5 years, and I've kind of played everything. I've been playing D&D since I was 19. Right now, I am playing a werewolf Gloomstalker Ranger. Right now, I'm really enjoying Gloomstalker Ranger. Just hit level 14, so now I can kind of vanish without a trace, which is pretty rad. Bonus action height and all that stuff.
Hey guys, it's Patrick 4D here, the digital chef. As the name suggests, my niche is photorealism within the food and product space. In other words, crafting those tasty static hero shots for packaging. My niche, like many others, started by trying new things. I first began my 3D endeavors around 2016 in college, just making fun abstract artworks. And because I was in school for film and television, I already had prior knowledge of lighting, camera, and composition. The abstract realm quickly turned into making product renders, and product renders turned into sculpting characters. After characters, I moved on to cartoon foods re-inspired in a photorealistic way. That set the tone for what would soon become this never-ending series of food, which has been about 4 years now. Finding this niche for me was so life-changing because it put me into a much smaller pond to stand out in. Most artists come into the game as generalists and are commonly misinformed into thinking that knowing how to do everything is obviously the best way to get most work. And I'm here to tell you that's just a lie. It's a blatant lie. That may be true if you're seeking a generalist position at a small studio, but for freelancing, it's actually the easiest way to ensure you won't stand out as well. Not only did I realize I had a knack for creating photorealistic food in ZBrush, but that there was a hole in the industry waiting to be filled. Without realizing it at the time, I took that spot and ran with it. Now when people ask for recommendations for food artists in the 3D realm, my name is brought about much more frequently, not just because of my content and the quality of my work, but because there's much less competition. So follow these rabbit holes and find your niche. Food for thought.
I hope you feel short-rested, and now we can talk about the freelancing aspect of finding your niche. What is a niche? A niche is basically your sort of little primary skill set, primary expertise that allows you to find success. When we heard the stories from Jonathan, Kyle, and Patrick, they've all found different niches in some way, and those little niches have given them the ability to find success as freelancers or artists in different ways to be known in the industry as professional artists. And niching can come down in many forms. It can be involved in doing actual working at a salary 9 to 5 job, but you have a specific skill set that those companies need. Or you can be a freelancer and you have a specific type of look or a specific workflow that gives you the ability to be like, hey, I'm really good at this thing and you should pay me a rate that is worth making a really good living doing. So niching down is basically saying, I have this skill set, I'm really good at it, and if you remember from The Dark Knight and the Joker, when he's trying to get some work, he's like, if you're good at something, you shouldn't do it for free. So, with that being said, niching down is giving you the ability to command higher rates because of expertise. I have a friend of mine, and he did go to medical school. He has a doctorate, and he does very well for himself because he niched down into radiology and has a very, very comfortable salary because he was able to find that specialty. So why can't artists do the same thing? That's why there's so much education around going to art school. All that being said, niching down really just comes down to establishing expertise, like I said. And I'm pulling some of these concepts from the book, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns. It's a very good book. I got the recommendation from Chris Doe on his social media recommendation things, and I've just been reading all the books that he says to read. And this one was actually impacted me a lot. And what the Win Without Pitching Manifesto describes is the importance of defining your specialization because it gives you a sales advantage, and then pulling from concepts in economics, it gives you a comparative advantage and a competitive advantage. And those advantages can give you the ability to be like, hey, my rate is worth this much. The problem with most markets in traditional economic terms is that everyone who offers general and broad skills will end up undercutting every single other firm until everyone's not making a profit at all. So where a niche comes in, it gives you the ability to be like, hey, I'm worth this much, so you can actually make some profit on your work and live a comfortable life as a freelancer. Now, you can't always command like infinite profit, but we should niche down and command a rate that is fair for the skills that we have relative to our industry. So we'll talk a little bit about relative rates to industries later and rates in another podcast, but ultimately, you can almost think about niching down maybe a little bit Machiavellian because it's a way to reduce competition. Because when you have a very clear advantage over other, I hate to say it, other artists, other firms, you are given the opportunity to be like, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm actually going to be your best option for this because you have that specific niche. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I may not be the best artist, and I will admit that, but I know a lot about games and gaming because I played so much World of Warcraft and the World of Warcraft trading card game and then Magic and board games and stuff. So I can understand what it's like to talk to a client about board games and like animating that stuff versus a lot of other artists may know how to animate really well, but they don't know how to animate card games and board games and stuff. So that does reduce my competition a little bit. It also reduces the size of my market. So definitely things to consider. It's always a balance of supply and demand when it comes to thinking about our niche. Now, the economics concepts I mentioned were sales advantage, comparative advantage, and competitive advantage. So just to quickly define first a sales advantage. A sales advantage is basically, it's from the book, from Blair, Mr. Enns. To possess a sales advantage means that when and where we choose to compete and win often. And then with that comes a price premium. The price premium is to command a price premium that means we win. We do so not by cutting price, but by charging more. So we charge more because of our expertise, and that sales advantage we possess is the specialization that we have. Now, I don't, when I was studying economics, I don't remember any of those specific terms coming from any of my economics textbooks, but I do very much remember comparative advantage and competitive advantage. And just to quickly summarize what those means, comparative advantage it's an economic concept where if one firm, country, person is less efficient at producing something, they can still benefit from trading with one another. So let's say, for example, your client hires you to do some work. They hire you to do the work because you have a comparative advantage to make art. You can do the thing relative to your client. Sure, your client might be able to do it, but they're going to be slower. It's going to take more time for them. So it's just better for you to actually trade, even though they may have to pay you. That's just how freelancing works, because it would cost them more money and time for them to do it themselves, because you could just do it faster. So you have the comparative advantage over a lot of potential clients, over even other artists. Sometimes you might have a comparative advantage over doing a specific type of art relative to someone else, so you can do something else. Or so you can do that work and the client can go do something else, or your colleague can do something else with their specific skill set. Now, competitive advantage comes into play because you just have a lower cost of producing a certain type of work. You just do the work faster, better, cheaper, etc. The most economics way to describe this is your opportunity cost to do the work is lower relative to someone else. So as artists, that applies very much so. A client hires you, let's say they're a business owner, and they need to go ahead and make some marketing campaign, they need to do some illustration, they need to do some graphics, whatever it is. It would cost them more money and time and just for that business owner to go do the work rather than just be like, oh, I'm going to go hire you to do this, because the business owners overall, their time is maybe worth more doing something else. So you as an artist need to understand that when you come into a potential client project, you may have competitive advantage and comparative advantage over your potential client, colleague, etc. And that should give you a sales advantage to command a higher price for the work. So niching down is really important for being a freelancer because it does give you some level of leverage to make a good living. So with all the definitions out of the way, I want us to take another short rest, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what should you specialize in. So go take your short rest, and we'll be back shortly. So choosing what you specialize in is obviously subjective. I can't tell you what to do. I prefer doing gaming things because I'm a nerd and it brings me joy. Versus there are other people who are willing to specialize in, say, something like medical, or they specialize in, I don't know, character rigging, etc. If you remember the story from Jonathan Winbush earlier, he specialized and found a little niche of being known as the Unreal artist because he could produce work faster and cheaper because Unreal Engine is faster. He could do work and over faster and cheaper than other potential motion graphics artists, which gave him leverage and a competitive advantage over competitive other people in the industry. Likewise, Patrick 4D, he saw a gap in the industry where he could provide something that was in demand, but there was no supply for it. So he found a niche there. And Kyle specialized his skills for his passion of leveraging his knowledge of toys and metal music and applying that towards his skill set to work as a toy designer. So again, all three of these examples, it should give you an idea of like, hey, you could specialize in specific maybe software or workflows or specific type of art, or specialize in the things that you know and you're passionate about. So I'll just say straight up and get it out of the way, I don't think you should specialize or niche down in specific skills or a specific software. Skills, yes, but software, I don't think it's worthwhile. Because, like, let's be real, at the end of the day, a client or someone who's potentially hiring you, they don't care about how good you are at the tool. They care more that they get the results that they're looking for. And most of the time, let's be real, clients don't care like how good the art looks, as much as I hate to say it. They most of the time care, does it actually give me the outcome I need? The art does help influence the human behavior ideally, but they care about maybe increasing sales, communicating their message, reinforcing their brand, etc. And sometimes the art tool doesn't do that, and sometimes the easiest solution may not be the most artistic, but being someone who can specialize in creating art that serves the client's needs is a better thing to specialize in. So there's a level of empathy that does need to happen there, but when you try and find your niche as an artist, I like to think about it as, instead of specializing in a specific tool, specialize in a specific industry. So let's say you really enjoy metal music. So you should maybe try and do work that puts you closer to that industry. There are so many different types of industries. So there's entertainment, which is the one I most of the time participate in. There's government work, if you want to do that. Pharmaceuticals, those two probably pay well, but they're probably more boring. Cooking, photography, events. So many things that you could specialize in, and so many different industries that you can like lean into. It also is dependent on your interests as well. So do you like coffee and tea? Then maybe you could specialize in doing graphic design for those kinds of brands. For example, I have another buddy of mine. His name is Daniel Adolph. He runs a studio called Dino Creative in Orange County, and he very much loves kombucha. So he loves working with other kombucha brands. That brings him a lot of joy. So he focuses on what he's passionate about, and I think that's something that a lot of artists don't think about. It's like, okay, maybe I like these things in my life and I want to design for those industries. Maybe I should make some spec work to help leverage my passion and show that I am a specialist because of my knowledge in this scenario. So, as I said, there's lots of ways you can approach specialization and niching down. It really just does come down to what you enjoy. So you really should just ask yourself, what do you see yourself doing a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What actually gives you that kind of passion? I can't answer that for you. I'll share this about myself personally. I really enjoy games and entertainment products, so I stay in that industry. I like game cinematics, and I like learning more and leveraging my skills to do that and finding ways to help improve that. I also enjoy photography and filmmaking. It's fun. So I see myself doing a lot of things, but what I'm trying to say in this scenario is I see myself working primarily in the entertainment space. So I will take jobs across all different mediums, photography, video, motion graphics, 3D, etc. But I primarily choose to specialize in entertainment because I know that the most. So now think about what you should specialize in. Now, specialization can come in a form of maybe getting work for a studio or being a freelancer. So when it comes to specializing for studios, this is generally known as like B2B work, or like being part of like a big team. Maybe you have a W-2 job instead of a W-9. If you don't know what that means, that's like the tax forms that you get at the end of the year. And specializing for studios is a really good way to have a really comfortable and safe life, because you specialize in having a regular 9-to-5 job, it's consistent, etc. And they hire you because there is you help them make their products, communicate their message, etc. But you will probably make the least amount of money actually working as like a traditional 9-to-5. And the reason why is that paycheck is consistent and you're kind of just doing one thing. And they hire you to do that one thing. The reason why you don't really make that much money in a W-2 situation is obviously the large companies, they're trying to make the biggest amount of profit possible. It's hard to negotiate rates. You also are going to get paid regardless of whether the company is making a lot of profit or not. So there's a thing in economics called the handoff tax. And the best way to think about the handoff tax is when you go to the airport, for example, and you buy a bottle of water. It's like, what, $10, $5 to $10, something like that. But if you go into the mountains, it's free to get water. Every single time that water changes hands. It goes to someone else. That person who's trying to sell the water must make a little bit of profit on top of that. So you're adding more money. Go get the water, it's free. Buy it from a gas station or from the water supply place. Like you actually go to, I don't know, Arrowhead water bottle factory in that place. They might have a little gift shop or something. It's probably like $1 there. Great. You go to a metal concert, it touched a lot of hands, and there's a lot of demand for that water. It's going to be like $15 for a cup of water. So all that being said, the reason why the handoff tax applies to being a studio artist is the big firm and big studio is basically trying to like make a profit off of whoever's work that is contributing to that. And most of the time you can't really control that as a studio artist. But it does come with a lot of security and a lot of ability to maybe work on the things you do enjoy, like a specific type of work. Like let's say you worked hypothetically for Blizzard. If you work at Blizzard, it's probably pretty great because it's just a lot of really cool things. And that just sounds awesome. Like maybe you take a traditional 9 to 5, but you get to work on Thrall and Anduin and quests in World of Warcraft. So all that being said, you could specialize for a studio and contribute your skills to a studio in a really meaningful way, but you may end up making a little bit less money because of the way agencies are marking up your work so then the overall firm and studio can make a profit. There's other benefits about working at a studio, so I'm not downplaying that. And I think even though this podcast is mainly about freelancing, it's more for like artists of like finding their space and really what brings them joy. So that might be something that you're really passionate about. Now, specializing for your interests. Let's just say you really enjoy board games, like me. You know a lot about board games. You know what drawing a card means. You know what dice rolls should look like and feel like and how satisfying it is to get a nat 20. You know you can have those conversations with clients, and that saves the client's time. That saves the client's money because there's less revisions and there's less reviews. And you generally can specialize in your interests because you know how to communicate with those clients specifically. And the specialization is not just like, oh, I'm really passionate about this, but it's you understand how important certain aspects of your interests are. Like, again, metal music, for example, the merchandise line is a very important thing. And let's say you're doing videography for metal concerts, like getting some cool shots of that because you know how important that is. Like get a couple shots of that because that's just a thing that you just know is probably going to make people happy and reinforce to the audience that like, hey, we have merch, go buy it. There's a level of empathy happening there because you know what it's like to go to a metal concert. Another example is that you can specialize in how you communicate to your clients. It's not just like the work that you create, but because you have meetings that take up less time, you understand their notes and revisions. Like, yes, you may do less good work, but because you save the client's time, there's a way to leverage your specialization and command a higher price. Maybe the quality is a little bit worse, but you get the project delivered to your client faster because of all the other little inputs that does happen when you actually go and make work for a client. So think about, what is your overall goal? Do you want to maybe work at a studio as an artist and specialize some skills and like contribute your skills to a really big production and a really big team, character rigging, illustration, concept art, etc.? Or do you want to specialize in your interest and maybe do some direct to client work? Now, when it comes to doing the direct-to-client work, you can leverage your knowledge, your skill set to help save your client money, save your client time, and ultimately give them a better experience as a freelance artist, and hopefully you get booked again with them. So, all that being said, those are some things about what you can specialize in, how you can think about choosing your specialization, and whether it would be right for you. Now, we're going to take another short rest, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how not all industries and not all clients are equal. So go take your short rest, and we'll come back with full spell slots, or at least some of them. So not all industries and markets are created equal. There's going to be different pricing expectations and basically what a client or a job is willing to pay based on the type of work that you do. So that does make niching down a little challenging because there may be something that you are passionate about, but it may not be super lucrative. So let's just say, for example, in videography terms, and I understand if you don't do videography, I'm sure there's an example you can think of where you want to do something that's really fun, but it's actually not super lucrative, so you have to do the stuff that pays the bills. So in videography, you could go shoot events like Comic-Con or Gen Con, and these are some of the stuff that I've done, but on average, there are people who shoot more weddings that will charge like 5 times more than what I would ever charge to go film at like a convention. And the reason for that is a lot of things. The expectations for paying for a wedding video is just higher. There's a lot more risk involved because if you miss that first kiss shot, it's you're not going to get paid as much, if at all. And at Comic-Con or Gen Con, you can kind of just spray and pray, and with exposing your image pretty decently, you could make a pretty good looking edit. But if you miss anything very important to the bride and groom at a wedding, it's going to cause some issues. So you specialize and command a premium price because you can reduce that risk. So all that being said, what clients are willing to pay within their industry will always be relative to that industry. I will admit I really love board games, and I've developed a really strong niche and specialization in this field, and I know a lot of artists who are significantly better than me, but I dare say I probably know games a little bit better than them, and I just have a small network of clients that I've been able to accumulate over the last couple of years just by ideally being good to work with, to a point where I can continue working in the entertainment space, because that's where I want to stay. And I like doing entertainment videos, whether it's I do mostly board games, but I have dabbled in some video game projects, and I just like games, and I like staying in this space. Versus I do know some other artists who have been able to command higher rates because they work in the medical field, and they can charge a lot of money because they know anatomy and physiology and biology and also ZBrush sort of thing. So all that being said, the type of industry that you choose to specialize in will very much be dependent on what the client is willing to pay and what that industry typically pays as well. And you have to really just balance what is important to you. Is it specializing in your interest, doing projects that are important to your soul, or is it making a lot of money? I'll give you a personal example. I work in a lot of board game Kickstarter videos, and some of them will have like 5,000 backers, and it'll make like $300,000 for the overall Kickstarter video. And I'll have other projects where it's like, oh, I'll do a $3,000 or $4,000 Kickstarter video, and the Kickstarter only makes $50,000. You can't predict those things, and unfortunately, because of that, the price for sometimes board game Kickstarter videos might be lower than what some artists would be willing to receive for the type of work that I do. But I found a way to make it really lucrative, and one of the ways I do that is I maintain a lot of creative control in the projects, and just being really good at what I do and being really empathetic to what the client's needs are, that allows me to command a higher rate. And I hope that doesn't come off as arrogant, but I share that because I'm hoping to encourage you to ask yourself, like, hey, I have this specialization, I have this knowledge, hey, your rate might be lower, but like if you let me do it this way, I could do this project for you. And that's a way I find ways to specialize and keep doing work in my industry. Now, I will say I have done a couple floater projects here and there just to make a little extra cash so I can buy some extra toys for my business, like new cameras, new lenses, etc. And I did a project that was related to government work, and it just paid 5 times more than normal, and it wasn't terribly exciting. It was pretty easy mode, but it was a lot of extra cash, and I was able to make the client really happy. They were really satisfied, and we just made something super quick, super easy, and I made a lot of cash doing it. That was government work, kind of boring, not very exciting, and made a lot of money. Versus board games, it's super exciting, sometimes very stressful, but boy, at the end of it, it looks so much more exciting. And that is something that I've considered. And sometimes you might do some work for the meal, as in you just make some extra cash to support your lifestyle, and you do stuff for the real. And you find ways to leverage that with your specialization to help grow yourself into the artist you want to be known for. So when it comes to finding your niche, it really just does come down to a couple things. First is aligning your niche and specialization with your interests, goals, and lifestyle. If you want to have a lifestyle that makes a lot of money, that really likes nice things, the bougie things of life, you might take more the boring, unexciting, or like maybe even just really stressful parts of work that are just for really high risk industries, but you get to live a higher quality of life versus you may choose to live a lifestyle that maybe is a little bit more frugal, but you get to work on the things that really bring you joy. And there's no wrong answer, and there's also ways to create phases for that. Maybe you have some times where you really put some pressure on yourself to work on the harder things, and then you take some time throughout the year to work on some things that just bring you joy. And it's just kind of like operating at cost, but you can leverage that work in other ways to do more that work later in the future. And really that just comes down to balancing money with personal fulfillment and like what really fulfills you as an artist. So I want to end this podcast with a little, I guess, just reflective questions to think about for your niche, and think about how you can direct this energy for the rest of this phase of life that you're in, whether it's the next year, the next 6 months, etc. And this may involve trying to find some new clients, new work, or it might be doing some type of spec work to really reinforce the things that you do want to specialize in. So those questions are, what are you interested in? What do you actually find joy doing as an artist? I'll say for myself personally, I'm really enjoying 3D modeling right now. I'm enjoying doing hard surface modeling. I like Halo. I like weapons. I like swords. I like daggers. And when I was playing World of Warcraft, it was always really exciting to get that new weapon and see how much new extra damage I would do. So that's the thing I'm really interested in right now. So think about, what are you interested in? What is your work ethic? And the reason why I ask what is your work ethic is that is something you can leverage and specialize in, as in you can work really hard to keep up with trends, learn new skills, kind of like what Jonathan Winbush did, or be really reliable, really effective, and really efficient. And that kind of ties into the comparative advantage and competitive advantages that we talked about earlier. How effective you are in your work, and does that give you an advantage over the clients that may hire you, that you can do the work more efficiently than them and you're worth the rate? Now, again, it also comes down to, are you good to work with? And that could be a niche in and of itself. Being just really good to work with, your communication skills, your overall sort of knowledge of the certain type of industry. Are you really organized with your files? Do you work well in a team? That can be a certain type of niche that like not many people really think about. We just think about like, oh, I'm really good at this skill, but like, what are you known for? Now, the last two questions are, how do you see yourself spending your time 1 year from now? Do you see yourself doing exactly what you're doing now? Do you want to keep leveraging and leveling up? Or, what do you see yourself doing a year from now? And lastly, what kind of clients do you imagine yourself working with a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So, those are the 5 questions. That is your niche podcast today. I hope you enjoyed the Creative Adventure podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and me bringing on some other guests to share their insights about niching down, let me know if you would like to hear more, or if you have recommendations from opinions from people you'd like to hear from. I would love to reach out and have more people on and collaborate with other people to share their freelance experiences. So if you have recommendations, would love to hear that. And we are now 6 episodes into the Creative Adventure podcast, so it is now time in which which I do gently request, if you have been enjoying this podcast, it would mean the world to me to leave some sort of review on whatever podcaster you're listening to. That would really help me help reach this podcast to more people and help create more of this content and be a better resource for freelancers and artists out there. And with that said, if you would not mind, again, leaving a 5-star review and or some sort of review. Roast me. If you 1 star so I can improve, I would love that. And as always, we're going to end with a dice roll to see what freelancing is going to be like this week. This week, we're going to use the same dice because it's been a good boy. Actually, I think last week we used the Dispel Red D20, and it's been really naughty. So we're using this metal D20 that has like dragons infused on it. I really like this one, and it's not been very naughty. So I like this one, and we have this wooden box that sounds real nice. So some ASMR. That was a 10. That was a 10. I'll take middle of the road. That sounds like a really good, just like, hey, we're just working on stuff, working on things, and we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for listening to the Creative Adventure Podcast. And as always, may the dice forever roll in your freelance favor. Take care. And thank you for joining me in the tavern today. Bye.